Hello, my name is Harriet Dawson, and I'm here at Virginia Commonwealth University's Autism Center for Excellence. And today we're going to be talking about professional learning communities and how that impacts a school culture change. As I travel across the country, I often find that people feel like they fully understand professional learning communities, and yet nothing could be further from the truth. This concept, this awesome concept, is riddled with myths that we're going to try to dispel today. I want to start with this quote. "We have always worked hard. Will we now choose to work smart?" As I work with classroom teachers and with school administrators, I have yet to find one that tells me that they're not working hard. And yet when springtime comes and those end-of-year test scores return, you see depression across the faces of so many of our professional educators. What went wrong? I worked so hard. There's no time left in a day for me to work anymore. I believe that, and I have witnessed that. So we've got to learn to work smarter. I believe the key to school improvement is through professional learning communities. And we're going to put that concept under the microscope today. And periodically, I'm going to ask you to pause and reflect upon some questions that must be answered if we're truly going to change our school's culture to one of failure into one of success for our children. So, to get us started, I want you to think about how has your school's culture changed in the last 2 years? How has your school's culture changed in the last 2 years? I bet the first thing you want to say is that it's changed with an increased use in technology. Most of our testing programs now are now online. So we've increased technology along those lines. We're seeing more iPads. Some teachers are even allowing the use of smartphones in their daily instruction. Now that's a real change. But if we really put our schools under the microscope, we're probably not going to see any real changes in our school's culture. We pretty much still assign one teacher to a classroom. We still, unfortunately, rely way too heavily on a textbook, maybe a couple of textbook service references. But really, the format of school, even if you go back 100 years, has not changed drastically. Some other questions I want you to consider as we move forward with this concept of professional learning community. Do all of your school's instructional personnel know the performance levels of their students? Now wait a minute, I'm not just talking about the grades these students receive in your grade book. I'm talking about their performance level in reading, in mathematics, in science, in social studies. Who's directing the work to ensure that our classroom and division and administrative personnel know the performance levels of students? This cannot just be the work of your division testing director. Are you aware of current achievement gaps? This is the most painful question to me because it means that some students in our schools are achieving and others are not. Why is this? And what's causing these gaps in our achievement levels for certain students? We know in particular that African American males struggle in our schools. This is across the board, across the country. Why is that? And going back to kindergarten, first and second grade, was this the profile when they were in those grade levels? A lot of people are finding there were no gaps at the primary levels. So what's changed to cause gaps among our various subgroups? I hope you're aware that in Virginia, we have 3 racial groups that we analyze: whites, African Americans, and our Hispanic population. That's not necessarily true in other states, but these are the 3 that Virginia has chosen to treat as a subgroup. We also have students that are economically disadvantaged. This provides a challenge for some of our schools who are seeing gaps between students of low socioeconomics as compared to those of average or high socioeconomic status. What about our limited English proficiency students? Are there gaps in their instructional levels? If so, and here's the tough question, what are we doing about it? One of the most effective ways leaders communicate priorities is by what they pay attention to. Are you only paying attention to the successful students in your schools? What happens to those that are not performing at the levels dictated by the federal and state accreditation standards or within your own school environment? This text is the basis for my comments today. It's called Learning by Doing. It's written primarily by Richard and Rebecca Dufour, and I encourage you, if you're looking for a text to help you get started in better understanding professional learning communities, purchase this text. I'm going to share with you some elements from this text, including a case study that I think will bring focus to your work and help you better understand what a true professional learning community looks like. The foundation, and we're going to return to this a little bit later on in the program, for professional learning communities is a mission, a vision, collective commitments or shared values, and common school goals. Oh, come on, Harriet. We all have a mission statement. We are sick to death of hearing about this mission statement. Well, and I don't want this publicized in any national magazines, but this is my 39th year in education, and I've only had one superintendent who made decisions based on the mission of that school division. In other words, I couldn't get a red cent out of that man unless I could show how my expenditures related to the mission of the school system, which of course involved student achievement and improvement in student achievement. So I don't want us to put mission and vision aside. I want us to make them the heart or the foundation of our program. I told you we were going to dispel some myths about PLCs, so let's get started right now. Everybody wants to make this a program. It's not a program. And my PLC in my school is not going to look like the PLC of a Richmond school. Also, other than the text that I just told you, which you don't have to purchase, this cannot be purchased. It can only be implemented by a school staff. And guess what? It's ongoing. A few years ago, I had the privilege of being part of a Xerox school business partnership. And one thing we learned in quality improvement is that it never ends. So don't think that this is ever going to end, because just as one problem is solved, there will be others. You've got new students coming. You've got new faculty coming. You've got new administrators coming, bless your hearts. It's ongoing. Think of this quote: professional learning communities is a continuous, never-ending process of conducting schooling that has a profound impact on the structure and culture of the school and the assumptions and practices of the professionals within. Oh, if they had only given me 2 days to do this training, I would whip out Sengi's ladder of inferences to begin the discussion about beliefs. Beliefs are such a powerful part of the actions that we take. We're not going to discuss those today, but if you're struggling with really believing that all students can learn, you need to take a look at that ladder and find out why it is that you do not believe all students can learn. I mentioned that PLC is not a program, but I want you to think of it in terms of an umbrella. Think of it as encompassing everything you do at your school. It's that big overriding structure that's going to provide meaning to everything that you do. A good definition for a PLC is it's an ongoing process. Remember we talked about that earlier, in which educators work, take this word, underline it, make it bold, collaboratively in recurring cycles of collective inquiry and action research to achieve better results for the students they serve. What do you mean, students I serve? Oh, no, no, no. They're there to hear my pearls of wisdom. Well, folks, we got to have a chat about that. We exist for students. For years and years, I thought I was part of an employment agency. That's not true. Shame on me for investing more of my time in the employment aspect of a school rather than the instructional side of a school. We exist for only one reason, and that's for our students to learn. We're going to talk about that some more as well. We've tried to dispel some myths of PLCs, so now let's look at the major elements of a PLC. First, there's a focus on learning. I probably could end there. That's what it's about. That's what schools are about, a focus on learning. It's not a punishment. If you think back to little pre-K children that you know or kindergartners, they're so excited. They're going to school. They can't wait to learn. By third grade, reading is their most disgusting subject. They didn't do that to themselves, folks. We did that to them. Another major element of a PLC is a collaborative culture with a focus on learning for all. If you're planning on going to a place where you can select the students that you want to teach and only focus on certain ones, you probably need to go somewhere other than a public school. We're about learning for all. Another key element is a collective inquiry into best practice and current reality. How do you get at current reality? Folks, you got to have data. And data is not just one type. It's your perception of what's taking place, the observations that you make about your students. It's what your parents feel about the learning that their children are being exposed to, the teaching they're being exposed to. Another key element, action orientation, learning by doing. We as adults believe in that. We probably can learn something much faster if we're actually doing it. I think about hobbies, and in some of the other trainings that I provide, I talk about the importance of practice as we get better in our hobbies. It's funny, in our professional lives, we don't allow a lot of time for practice. We're too quick to judge and say, oh, you got to be able to do this perfectly because you've had training. Students feel the same way. Where does the practice element come in? A commitment to continuous improvement. You want your students to continually improve, but guess what? We also want our leaders and our classroom educators to continually improve. And we're all about results. We've been talking a lot at the State Department of Education about evidence. How do we know something's taking place? We've got to have evidence. That's true here as well. How do we know students are learning? Well, we've got to have some evidence, and we'll talk about how that comes into being as well. There are three big PLC ideas that I'd like for you to remember today. The purpose of our school is to ensure all students learn at high levels. High levels? I would be lucky if I could just get Johnny to get a D and pass my class and move on. How many times has Johnny been exposed to that same concept you're trying to teach him? Maybe if you took the instruction up another level and made it grade level appropriate, Johnny might be more interested. Or maybe if you tried a different strategy, Johnny would be more inclined to be engaged and master that concept. Another big idea is helping all students learn, which requires a collaborative and collective effort. You know, I thought the days of teachers going behind closed doors had passed us. I still do not see collaboration taking place. And I'm going to stop fussing with classroom teachers about this and ask school leaders why they're not making this possible. They have to be the decision makers to allow a collaborative time during the school day. And don't tell me it's not possible. I've seen it across this country become a reality when it's been acknowledged as an important concept. And another big PLC idea is to assess our effectiveness in helping all students learn. We must focus on results, that evidence I was talking about a while ago. Evidence of student learning, and use results to inform and improve our professional practice and respond to students who need intervention or enrichment. Now, I know some of you are just jumping up and down right now because you've got an after-school tutoring program or you meet with students in the morning. Well, good for you. You're discriminating because some of our children can't stay after school. Some of them just cannot get there early in the morning. There are too many other things taking place in the home dynamics. You need to provide intervention and or enrichment during the school day. That's when we have the students. That's when they're captive. Folks, Richard Dufour told me years and years ago, one of the first conferences I ever got to attend, that we have to see with new eyes. We have to see things differently. If your blinders are preventing you from doing something different, we got to go to that ladder again that I was referencing earlier, Peter Senge's ladder, and talk about why is it that you see it that way and believe so strongly that there is only one way to do something. Within this link, there are free materials. And as you're beginning to think about introducing the concept of professional learning communities to your school, I'd like for you to go to this link. Even if you haven't purchased the book, can you believe that they're willing to allow you to have access to these free materials? Excuse me while I allow this to come up. I'm just going to spend a moment here and have you look at some of the materials that are available to you. A data picture of our school. I'm not sure that you can read this, so I'm going to just read it very, very quickly. But one of the printable reproducibles is a data picture of our school. It's a form that allows you to collect key data that's going to help you better understand what's taking place at your school. Critical issues for your team to consider, and I'm going to introduce you to those in just a few moments. Cultural shifts in a professional learning community, and a glossary of key terms and concepts. See, one of the big advantages of a PLC is we're all operating off of the same language now and utilizing this language. And again, that link is located on our slides. So, are you ready to take the plunge? Are you ready to even consider this thing called PLC? Are you ready to develop a common vocabulary? To not be satisfied with just being good? Reminds me of Jim Collins' book, From Good to Great. What are you satisfied with? Do you like it that just 50% of your students are passing each year? What about your grades? Are most of your students getting C's and D's? Could that have anything to do with you? Are you ready to accurately assess where we are and then take action based on what we know? You see the beauty of the answers for all of these questions. Do not rest just on your shoulders alone, but It's going to be a collaborative effort. So let's go. First, we've got to have a clear and compelling purpose. I want to talk with you about this for just a moment. It's an interesting case study that involves a principal who, like so many of us, went to a conference. And this principal was introduced to the concept of the professional learning community. Oh, she was so excited she couldn't wait to get her faculty back together and introduce them to the mission statement that she had developed. So with great joy, she introduced her mission statement that she'd worked so hard on to her staff. What do you think happened? They didn't like it. They thought that she didn't include enough information for the student to apply a level of effort. The guidance counselor didn't think there were enough emotional overtones listed, and some of the staff just didn't like it at all. So the principal was a little deflated and decided to put it on the shelf for a little bit, let her staff think about it some more. Well, you know what faculties are like. They gathered around one another, a little small group, and they came up with their own mission statement and presented that at the next faculty meeting. Well, that didn't go over so well. A lot of people started to argue, and the principal decided, well, I think I'll forget about this PLC thing, and I'll start another initiative next year. That's what happens so often to great ideas that are not implemented correctly. Think with me for just a moment. What would have been a better plan for this principal rather than coming straight in with her own mission statement? What would you have done differently? Would you have possibly gotten a smaller group together to first talk about what's taking place at our school? What's going well? What's not? Get that small cohort committed to thinking differently about what they wanted the school to look like. And then begin the process of taking it before the faculty. Maybe going through departments first. Maybe going through grade levels first. But not hitting the entire staff with it at one time. That's not how we build consensus. Consensus comes one step at a time, but you've got to have that small cohort of people with you first in order to take a great idea forward. So what I would encourage you as you begin to look at PLCs and to initiate PLCs in your schools, that you do it with a small cohort first. You know, nothing breeds success like success. And as people that are on the outliers, I call them, who are not quite ready to commit, once they see student achievement beginning to improve and that the culture of the school begins to improve, they're going to want to get on that bandwagon. We all want to be part of a success story. So don't confuse mission with action. Intent is a wonderful, wonderful thing. But if you've got no action to back it up, you're really not going anywhere, and certainly our students' achievement is not improving. So first, I want you to consider initiating a structure and a system to foster qualities and characteristics consistent with the school you're trying to create. When I do change training, one of the things we talk about is you got to see it. What does success look like? And you got to spend some time talking about that. What does success look like? Well, in my dream school, it's that every child is involved with an activity that's leading him to be successful in knowing an essential skill set, but also they're enjoying it. It's not that they don't feel any angst, because quite frankly, when we feel that little bit of angst, that's probably where learning is taking place the best. So we don't want everything to be a cakewalk for our students. We want them to invest themselves, but we want there to be success for these students as they increase their achievement levels. I want you to create processes to monitor critical conditions and important goals. Now, whose responsibility is this? Well, it's everyone. You're part of a professional learning community, and by being part of this community, you're taking responsibility for monitoring. There's another phrase we use called distributed accountability. It's where everyone in that school, whether you've got that student in your classroom or not, takes responsibility for knowing that child and for encouraging that child. I once had a teacher tell me, "I believe in that, Ms. Dawson. I believe in that. I am so sick of students coming down to my classroom. I'm at the end of the school. We have a rule that you can't wear hats in the classroom, and yet every day they show up having passed 5 other teachers wearing hats in my classroom." Well, she was right, but she was at a very, very base level of understanding distributed accountability. We have to be responsible, all of us, for implementing the policies that we say are dear to us in our schools. That doesn't mean having 100 rules and regulations. It means let's look. What do we want our school to look like? What do we want our students? How do we want them to behave in our classrooms? Then come up with essential rules and enforce those. Everyone enforces them. We also want to reallocate resources to support the proclaimed priorities. I had an experience this past summer called asset mapping. I would encourage every school to go through this activity. It was a real eye-opener for me, as well as those from the school where I was attending. You look at every program, every piece of software, every piece of hardware for that matter, that's used during the instructional program of our students. And you ask, what data am I getting for this? Again, going back to monitoring. How is this particular program helping you monitor student learning? And if it's not, then get rid of it. If it's not being utilized to move students forward, then that's a waste of a resource. And always posing the right questions. We want to model what is valued. I talk about this a great deal when we're looking at faculty members and how they model diversity. Go in any lunchroom in any of our schools, and you're probably going to see diversity at its worst. You're going to see only teachers eating lunch together, while the administrators eat somewhere else. Or you're only going to see physical education teachers eating by themselves, while the mathematics and science teachers eat in another place. You might even start to see diversity in race, where African Americans will eat in one location and whites in another, or Hispanics in another. We have to model what is valued. And if we believe in getting information from other people, our students must see us asking questions of fellow professionals. We've also got to celebrate progress. This is often difficult to do because sometimes it comes off as phony. But we have to build in times when we celebrate what's taking place in our schools. We are making success happen in our schools. We've got to make our students feel good about the success that they're experiencing, but it's got to be real. It has to be genuine. And then probably one of the toughest pieces of action is confronting violators of commitments. When you're working in a professional learning community, everyone is responsible for moving that school forward. And if someone is not doing their part, maybe that's not the school for them. And somebody has to have that conversation. But again, it could go back to your beliefs, and the time has got to be spent on exploring those beliefs. I said we were going to return to this, so I want to share with you how we break down these 4 major components of our PLC. Have you ever heard the comment, my PLC is meeting today? Or we've got to have a PLC meeting soon? That doesn't sound much like an umbrella, does it? That sounds like a part to me. PLC is your system that's in place, and it may be comprised of multiple meetings or multiple groups, but this work falls under the umbrella of the PLC. First, we start with our mission. Why do we exist? That's what your mission tells you. Why do you exist? Your fundamental purpose for existing. It clarifies priorities and sharpens the focus of the school. So time has got to be spent in developing this mission. And then your vision. What must our school become to accomplish our purpose? What have we got to do in the future to move us forward as we strive to meet the needs of our students in the future? And it provides us with directions. Then our values, our shared values. How must we behave to achieve our vision? That's a tough one, folks. And a lot of times we just go in with a list and we all raise our hand and approve it without really thinking about what is a value that I have for this school and what am I willing to commit to in order for our mission to become a reality. And then finally our goals, which will mark our progress. And we don't need to have 100 goals. We need to have those essential goals that are going to take us from an ineffective program to one that's effective for all of our students. It's going to provide targets and timelines and establish priorities. That's not to say that other things are not important, but for too long we have tried to eat the entire elephant. We've tried to solve world hunger in our schools. And guess what? We haven't been very effective. So I ask you, when you're in this beginning phase of establishing a professional learning community, spend some time talking about what it is you value and what your common school goals are going to be. We mentioned the importance of celebration, but it's got to have a purpose. It can't just be something we do just because we think somebody might approve of it or we might make the newspaper that week. Celebration has got to be everyone's responsibility, and we have to establish a clear link between the recognition and the behavior or a commitment you're attempting to encourage and reinforce. Remember, it's about modeling. What are we saying with our actions? And we want to create opportunities for many winners. So, this is a time that I would ask you to think about your current mission, your current vision, the values that you hold, and your goals. I would want you to clarify how effective you are at communicating priorities. I've watched school systems be run over by businesses because they could not articulate what the priorities were for their school. You need to be very clear on that when you ask for assistance from businesses. We have businesses throughout this country that are more than willing to help us, but we have to be very clear in what our needs are. And as I said at the very beginning, we do not want to drag our feet when establishing our mission, our vision, our values, and our goals. We want to move quickly to action, but we do not want to do 100 different things and not do any of them well. We want to select those few key areas and really commit to them and do them well. We want to build shared knowledge when asking people to make a decision. We want to use the foundation to assist in day-to-day decisions and use the foundation to identify existing practices that should be eliminated. I am amazed at the number of times we'll sign off on a purchase order and spend thousands of dollars for a resource that's not assisting us in improving student achievement. We never take the time to ask, is this improving student achievement? That's what the asset mapping experience for me was all about. We always say we don't have enough money, and yet so often we're abusing the amount of money that we do have. Also, we want to translate the vision of our school into a teachable point of view. Do you know your vision for your school? Do you know your mission? Is it really about students becoming productive citizens in the future? If so, how are you going to measure that? We need to think about what our words are saying and make sure there will be evidence that we have achieved our mission. We want to write value statements as behaviors rather than beliefs and focus on yourself rather than others. Now, what does this mean? Because I've been talking about distributed accountability and how we all take responsibility. You got to take responsibility for what you're doing to move our professional community forward. Recognize that the process is nonlinear. It's not going to be a straight line. Any of you who have worked in education for very long know that we're going to jump all over the place. But with a legitimate plan in place, with legitimate goals, the path will be much easier. We want to create for our schools a focus on learning. And we've got to ask ourselves these questions. This is getting at that essential knowledge question. What is it we want our students to learn? I remember years ago when SOLs were first being assessed, and a teacher came back with an 80% passage rate. I cannot do a backflip, but I came darn close that year because that was an awesome first score. The second year, the individual also had an 80% passage rate. Well, I was happy, but I wasn't quite as happy as I was the year before. The third year, another 80% proficiency rate. Nothing had changed. Was there a problem there? We needed to ask some serious questions because 20% of our students were not reaching proficiency, and that may have been my child or your child. How will we know when each student learns what we have said is essential for them to know? How will we know that? What kind of assessments are we going to use? And then, what do we mean by guaranteed curriculum and common formative assessments? If you look at our schools, would you say that there is one curriculum, or are there multiple curriculums at play, curricula? What resources can we provide that will assist us? What process can we use to engage in this work? What will proficiency look like? And what are effective strategies for monitoring student learning? Does this sound like work that one person could do? Of course not. It takes collaboration. It takes the power of people working together, bringing their strengths to the table. It took 4 years, but finally in one division in which I worked, and when I was responsible for professional development, I had teachers coming to me and telling me, you've got to get me some help in such and such an area. I don't have the skill set necessary to meet my students' needs. Did I think that was a weak teacher that came to me? Absolutely not. I thought that was the strongest of the strong teachers. This individual had recognized a lack in his or her ability to reach out and be successful as an instructor for all of his or her students. That's what collaboration does. It helps you identify strengths and or some areas of weakness that together as a collaborative group you work on. We cannot all be success stories in everything we're asked to do in our schools. It's just impossible. So we have to rely on one another. We also have to recognize the power of common formative assessments. And folks, there are a multitude of ways that you can develop a common assessment. What's important here is that those assessments are in alignment with our curriculum. I do not say that lightly. For me, this is the missing piece. While we work so hard, and yet we have a failure to be successful for all students. We are not teaching at the level of rigor demanded by the standards, and then we're not assessing at that same level. I still work with teachers who develop assessments after they've taught a lesson. How do you know where you're heading if you don't develop assessments based on what those standards are demanding? Begin with the end in mind. I know you've heard that your entire career, but it's such a powerful concept as you look at this concept of alignment and ensure that our standards, our assessments, and the strategies that we're using to prepare students to be at a proficient or higher level on our end-of-year assessments is so very critical. I do not hesitate to say that our job is to prepare students to do well on those assessments. Who else would we want preparing our students other than professional educators? Assessments are a part of every profession. I haven't had a single individual come up to me and say, "Oh, your poor son having to take a law board before he could become an attorney." It's part of their profession. We have to look at assessments not as something the devil sent to us, but as part of our circle of instruction that's complete with good standards, solid assessments, and instructional strategies that ensure all of our students are going to do well on those assessments. There are more tips for moving forward. Less is more. Again, stay away from world hunger. Identify those essential skills. Focus on proficiency in key skills, not coverage. It's not about finishing that 150-page textbook. It's about recognizing what you said was essential and then ensuring your students can perform at a proficient level in those key areas. Recognizing that common assessments might create teacher anxiety. I get that. If as a grade level or as a subject area you're using common assessments and one teacher doesn't do well, that's when you've got to rally the troop. It doesn't make that teacher a bad teacher. But you got to get the focus off of the teacher and look at those students who are not achieving. What are we going to do differently for those students? We might have to change classroom structure. We might have to get a mentor in for that teacher. We may have to get some additional training. But it becomes our responsibility as a school to ensure that all students have an equal chance of performing. We need to create shared understanding of the term common assessment. It's still a mystery in a lot of our schools. And we need to use assessments as a means rather than an end. Assessments guide us in knowing what it is we did well as educators versus where we need to have some improvements. So, building the collaborative culture of a professional learning community involves making time for collaboration. And as I said earlier, I put the responsibility for this on the backs of the administrators. So you've got to look at your school scheduling differently. You might have to change the times of your schools. This might involve district decision making, but there are ways to ensure that our classroom teachers have time for collaboration. We want to clarify the work that we're doing. We need to be very clear. What is this course that we're teaching and what are the essential skills? We're blessed in Virginia, so blessed in Virginia to have so many resources. We even have access to release test items that can guide our work. But without data, without spending time collaboratively looking at our data, we are doomed to repeat the same errors that we made the year before. If I could take one slide with me, it would probably be this one because it paints a picture of our school structure. We have within our schools 3 core beliefs, and I ask you to ponder your thoughts on each of these core beliefs. What do you really believe about students' ability and achievement? Do you believe all students can learn? What's the role of effort and efficacy? Do you believe in yourself? Do you believe in your students? Do you believe in that teacher next door wants to make a difference in the lives of her students? And power and control. Do you think you have any power or control over what takes place in your classroom, in your school? You see the word distributed accountability up at the top. That's that umbrella of professional learning communities. This encompasses our mission, our vision, and our core beliefs. And then our strategic structures, the triangle down below, makes all of our core beliefs real. Your homework following this session is to walk into your school and to look at these strategic structures, the physical environment. What does the parking lot tell you about the culture of your schools? Do not park here. See the office first. Do not stop. I'm a nervous wreck sometimes when I pull into some school parking lots. I do not feel welcome at all. I went up to one school and it said, please press this button so we may welcome you to our school. Oh my gosh, I felt like, wow, this is a place that really wants me to enter. Your physical environment, your policies and procedures. My new soapbox, and you're so lucky I'm not going to get off on that today, is about the role that policies play in preventing our students from achieving. You need to look at your policies on attendance, homework, tardies, discipline that we put into place. Are these keeping our students away from instruction or welcoming them to instruction? And then finally, our relationships. We spent some time talking about that. What does diversity look like in your schools? Are we truly about all people, all students, all teachers, or do we segregate ourselves? In closing, unless educators are working interdependently to achieve a common goal for which members are mutually accountable, they are not a team. We're such little individuals in our schools. A professional learning community, that culture can change that. And as I stated at the very beginning, we have always worked hard. Will we now choose to work smart? Thank you for being focused on student achievement. If I may provide any clarification about any of the ideas I've shared with you, I hope you'll contact me at the number or at the email address that's on this slide. It's been a real honor to talk with you about a passion of mine, professional learning communities. They really have made a difference in the schools that have put them into place and have taken the time and the effort to ensure that it is a collaborative effort and that it is a true culture change. Thank you.